Welcome to Burning Bright, a weekly podcast presenting poetry and prose from Passenger. After a long and prestigious career as a writer and a producer of public television series, Henry Morgenthau III began writing poetry in his 90s. He said, "Writing poetry for me is a celebration of the evening of a long life, a coda, a strikingly new expression of my inner being that surprises me as much as those who know me." After Henry died, his children established a prize in his name for a first book of poetry by a writer 70 or older. The submission period for the Morgenthau Prize is open now and closes at the end of January. Dennis Lee won the first Morgenthau Prize in 2020. Here's his poem, Grab Ash. I can't remember the stadium steps at the Hoolings Bay High School football field. Orange, I believe they were painted orange. But Commodore Cliven J. always seemed to be there at the wrong time to yell at us. Who was he, anyway, to yell at us? Orkin and Mel and Nuzzy and Little Pete and Moonshine and I liked to meet under the stadium seats and talk about women. Nuzzy smoked unfiltered cigarettes and lit his matches with one hand. Little Pete coughed near smoke and was always moving away from anyone who lit up. Mel smoked menthols, but Moonshine smoked the worst-smelling skinny cigars. Commodore was the exchange student. I don't know what country he was from. Nuzzy called him KJ. We saw him all over doing some kind of cleanup thing. I don't think he had to. Orkin, our smart friend, said that Commodore needed to express his grand appreciation for being allowed in this country. Mel thought he was nuts. Anyway, it was a very still spring day, not a leaf blowing, and Moonshine was trying to break his all-time record for not losing the ash from the end of his cigar. And well, Commodore, he just kept pointing and yelling at Moonshine. Dennis Lee's poem Grab Ash from his Morgenthau Prize-winning collection, Tidal Wave. The most recent Morgenthau Prize winner was Mark Elber. Here's his poem about what was happening in the world the day his father turned 14. February 5th, 1922. On my father's 14th birthday, the ink was drying on Rilke's notebook, the sonnets to Orpheus, having found the fingers to release them. 9 years before Dolly's clocks began to droop, weep, drape the landscape, the German mark was being unmoored, and all Europe would pay. When heads of axes were being buried in the thick bark of trees, forearms bulging in the grip of angry muscle, my father's inflammatory hair, his polyglot silence, were simmering in the eastern ends of Poland before broths began to thin, tubers dominate dinner, and the beer halls turn rowdy. In the year of the birth of the Soviets, in the year Ulysses spoke English in Paris with a brogue. From Mark Elber's Morgenthau Prize-winning book Headstone, February 5th, 1922. That last line, in the year Ulysses spoke English in Paris with a brogue, refers to James Joyce's book that was rejected by several English publishers but was finally published in France due to the influence of Sylvia Beach, owner of Paris's Shakespeare and Company bookstore. Sylvia Beach, by the way, was a Baltimore native, just like Passenger's editors Kendra Kopelke and Mary Asriel. Passenger has been honored to have David Keplinger as judge for the first 2 Morgenthau Prizes. David has published 8 books of poetry and has won numerous national and international awards, including the Emily Dickinson Award, the C.P. Cavafy Poetry Prize, the T.S. Eliot Prize, and the Colorado Book Award. And he was Henry Morgenthau's poetry teacher. We'll close this edition of Burning Bright with David Keplinger's poem, Almost. A man, almost an old man, was in my house painting walls. The paint, satin white, he stirred with a stick. The work, about finished, felt heavy in me, a tactile weight, similar to gulping heavy cream. I said to him, "Looks like you're wrapping up." To which he said, "Almost," and turned to face me. The paint crept down the wall where he'd last touched it. That was 10 years ago. I had a friend who made the faces she witnessed as a war photographer come alive for others who had no knowledge of what the war could have been like. One picture was a child who had no face to speak of. Many plastic surgeries glommed the making of an almost face against what was his face. My friend stood back and took the picture. That was her job. I think of all the work that must be done, none of which I will have done. It will be painted over by other work. The hall was bright and drying when the painter left. The friend just kind of vanished from my life. With no known effort I can trace, I am still here, in the same house, touching with my hand the wall, the hardened teardrop of the paint, where the painter said, "Almost," and turned around to look at me. Almost by 2020 and 2022 Morgenthau Poetry Prize judge David Keplinger, from his newest collection, Ice, published by Milkweed Editions. Thank you, David, for being our debut Morgenthau judge, and for your loving attention to the integrity and the quality of the competition. If you're a poet 70 or older and haven't published a book of poetry, consider submitting your manuscript. Or if you know someone that fits that description, tell them about it. In addition to publication, the prize comes with a $3,000 award. To learn more about the Morgenthau Prize, to enter the competition, to buy Dennis Lee's book Tidal Wave or Mark Elber's book Headstone, and or to subscribe to or learn more about Passager and its commitment to writers over 50, go to PassagerBooks.com. You can download Burning Bright from Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, and various other podcast apps. For Kendra, Mary, Christine, Roseanne, and the rest of the Passager staff, I'm John Shore.